Well, good day to everyone. Hopefully you're having a wonderful day, and I want to thank you so much for taking a little bit of time out of your day to spend some time with us here at the AD Solutions team at ManageEngine. For those of you that have been with us for a couple of days before in this series, welcome back. For those of you that are just attending for the first time, hopefully we will have some good information for you. A couple of days ago, we had a topic which was really more covering both sides of the hybrid environment, which was looking at privileged access. And we looked at all the different ways that you needed to secure your environments, both on-prem AD as well as in Azure AD. Yesterday, we focused primarily on your endpoints, talking about the fact that the inroads to an attack come through an endpoint, whether that be in on-prem, whether that be in the cloud. It really doesn't matter. Attacks come through those endpoints. So today what we're going to do is we're going to focus pretty much solely on the Active Directory infrastructure that's on-prem, and then on next Tuesday will be the final of in the series, and we're going to be focusing on detecting changes within the Azure Active Directory environment. So that's what we have left. So we're just cresting the halfway point in our series. So hopefully it's been good information for you. Some logistics. This is being recorded, so please keep an eye out in the next couple of days for an email that will be sent to you, which is a link to that recording. Please share it with anyone, your colleagues, coworkers, whatever, as we know that not everybody can attend these live events, and that's why we record them. If you do have any questions as we go through the material, there are some people working with me. You won't see them or hear them, but certainly if you ask questions in your GoToWebinar panel, they will be answering those questions in line. So please don't hesitate to ask any questions as we go through. And I think that's about it. So I'll give you a brief introduction for myself. My name is Derrick Melber. I am the Chief Technology Evangelist for the Active Directory Solutions team here at ManageEngine. And really what that means is I get the great opportunity to tour the world. This year alone, I've already been in Indonesia and India. In a couple of weeks, actually just under 2 weeks, I'll be leaving for New Zealand, hitting 3 cities in New Zealand, and then heading to Dubai. So quite a world travel. And then I'll probably be hitting 25 to 30 countries this year, doing our world tour, which I'll talk about in just a minute. I am an MVP, currently in Active Directory, but I've been an MVP in group policy as well. Written about 15 books over the last 19 years. And one of the recent books that I've written is the one you see there, which is Securing Privileged Access in Active Directory. This is an excellent resource for you to just kind of read. If you take the train home, it's a easy read on the train, but it's also something we highly suggest you share with others in the organization so that they can get a better understanding of what privileged access is and why it's so important. I'll be showing you how you can get a hold of that soon. What I want to do now is I want to jump into our website just so I can show you some free resources. We work diligently on content on the AD Solutions team, and I want to show you where you can find that content. This content is constantly being updated, and it's very useful for you. So if you come to ManageEngine.com, hover over Company, and go to Blogs, here's where you can come in and you can search for bits and pieces. I do recommend that you do a search. Let's say, for example, you wanted to do a search on Azure. You can come in here, find information, blogs on Azure, and what's available with regard to Azure that we've been blogging on. So you can search on security, Active Directory, group policy, a number of different things which we feel are pretty powerful. So that's where you can come and get information from our website on blogs, but we also have a dedicated website to securing your Active Directory infrastructure. If you, again, go to the main landing page, hover over products, and come down here to security hardening, this is a site that was built around 3 years ago, and it was built because of some technology Microsoft was releasing at the time called JIT and GIA. You'll see those here. JIT and GIA, just in time and just enough access, are technologies that Microsoft developed to help control privileged access. Over the last 4 years, asking administrators around the world if they are using this technology, I'm stuck at 3. I've actually only found 3 organizations that were fully implemented with JIT and GIA. So we didn't think that it was something for everyone, but we felt that everyone needed to secure Active Directory. Therefore, we created this site, which is a breakdown of all the different security areas in Active Directory, on your domain controllers, on your Windows servers, and your workstations. And we have written blogs and created videos and organized them for you per security area that allow you to go in and secure that particular part of your environment. This site is actually going to be updated in the next couple of months. I was actually working on some videos today to be 100% video. No more do you have to read, you just click and watch. I'll show you exactly how you need to set up security and what you need to do to secure your environments. This is also another great site for you to come with regard to meeting compliance regulations. As I've worked with Deloitte, PwC, and so many internal and external auditors over the years. And really that's the foundation for this information. The last resource, as I mentioned, we have this security book, Securing Privileged Access. Anywhere you see this logo on the website, click on it and you can download the PDF of the book for free. Again, share that with anyone that you want to share it with to help them understand the importance. Okay, so that gives you an idea of some free resources that you can take advantage of when we're done with our webinar. And finally, I want to mention our world tour. Our world tour for me starts in a couple of weeks when I hit Auckland, New Zealand. The world tour is our Active Directory seminars. They're half-day events, and they are geared towards solutions. I was just talking with my co-presenter earlier today about what he's going to present with SIM solutions. I will be focusing on insider threats, password controls, and multi-factor authentication and hybrid. And it's all about problems that we need to solve and how we can actually increase security and efficiency within our Active Directory environments. So I encourage you, no matter where you are in the world, we're probably going to be there. And we will be coming on multiple swings in the US in the first half of the year and then again in the second half of the year. So keep an eye out for those. You can actually gain access to that from our website. Our website is actually pretty powerful when it comes to sharing information about resources that are available in events. So if you come to our website, come down here to events, you can actually see all the events that we have. If you want to sign up for next Tuesday's webinar, come in here to webinars, and you can see right here the next Tuesday we have our final webinar in the series. And from here you can simply click and you can sign up. So please join us for those events. All right, that's enough about logistics and the setup. Let's talk about information. What I want to do is get you set up to where you are tracking information correctly within Active Directory. And then from there, what I want to do is I want to walk you through the different things that you can actually track within Active Directory. I was on a different webinar this morning primarily with Sweden and customers in Sweden, and we had an amazing tech talk on the different areas, and there were a lot of questions around monitoring and alerting on things that are happening in Active Directory. So I'll kind of mention some of the questions that they had as we go through the material. So to set up auditing correctly, and I did go over this Tuesday, but again, not everybody is at all these events. So I want to talk about the correct way of setting up auditing within your Active Directory environment to track the changes that are occurring. First, there's no auditing set up by default. So you have to go into group policy and set up either the audit policy or the advanced audit policy. Let me show you exactly where that's located. So here I'm in my group policy management console. I go to a GPO that has my particular audit policy set up. And you come here under Windows settings, security settings, advanced audit, which is what I recommend you set up. And then you'll see here that you go in and you configure the correct settings. So this is done either at the domain controller level or the domain level if you're going to actually track not just your domain controller changes, and it pushes it out. So one GPO setting or one GPO with all the settings can push out to all of your machines. Now, this is only the first of two steps that you need to make. The second one is you need to actually go into the SACL for Active Directory, and you need to set up in here what you actually want to track. Now, let me show you exactly where this is. Now, to get to this, you're going to go to Active Directory Users and Computers. You're going to go to the Domain node, click on Properties, Security, Advanced, Auditing, and voila, you're at what's called the SACL, the System Access Control List. As you can see, I am tracking changes to computers, groups, OUs, users, group policy, and the like. So with both of these enabled, you now are tracking every change that occurs in Active Directory to any of those objects. The results of all this tracking go into the security log in your event viewer. So this is where you can see all of those changes that are occurring. Now, not only are we tracking changes, we're actually looking at logons, successful, failure. We're looking at a variety of different things that are happening through Active Directory. Now, what we commented in on Tuesday is the fact that we have significant limitations trying to use the security log, so we need some type of a SIM solution that is going to allow us to pull information from the security log and then do something with it. And that's exactly what we're going to do as we go through the bits and pieces for that. Okay. All right. So there was actually just a question that came across, and I think it's important to announce it to everybody. Basically, the comment was, well, doesn't the product set up group policy? Absolutely, it does. With a single click, it does it for you. But what I'm here to tell you is most administrators want to know what's going on in the background. So I'm showing you what's going on in the background because I don't like things happening to my environment that I'm really not sure about the details. So that's exactly what's happening. When you click on that one button, we're setting up the SACL as well as we are setting up the group policy to set up auditing. And the reason that's important is inside of AD Audit Plus, which is the tool that we are going to be going over inside of AD Audit Plus, so let's actually get there. We not only provide the ability to track Active Directory, but we can also track file servers as well as servers that are non-domain controllers as well as your workstations. So in order to get those set up to tracking and optimize that, you're going to possibly have to go in and manually set some of that up. So that's how you do that. Good question. All right, let's look at the core Active Directory object changes that you're probably going to want to look at no matter what, okay? This would include users, groups, and organizational units. Now, at the onset, this information can be tracked in general, and here's what I mean by that. If we jump into AD Audit Plus and look at the ability to see the reports of monitoring of the changes to these, we can look at just generic account management. So anything that's happening, you can see here modified user information, anything that's happening, this is where you can come to see the bulk of that. If I want to look at individual concepts such as recently created users, recently modified users, anything that's happening specifically to users, I have reports specifically for that, as well as the same breakdown as groups and OUs. So this is where you can come in and see when these things are changing. So for example, if someone goes in, let's pick a user here, let's see AD Audit, someone goes in and changes a telephone number, right? So an administrator goes in, the user goes in, changes the telephone number within Active Directory. That information obviously is going to be tracked, it's going to be monitored. We pull it from the log, and now I have recently modified 80 changes, and here is going to be the phone number that I just put in for that user. So this is where you come to see that. Now, generic information is great, but as an admin, you typically want to create reports and alerts that are going to be more geared towards specifics. So for example, you might want to have reports that are specifically getting you information about service account management. Obviously, these are just users, but what you can do is you can carve out specific reports and alerts so that you don't have to filter every single time that you want to go in. It's a predefined filter giving you a view of what's going on. So as you see here, I have one report and associated alerts on service accounts. I have another one which is related to privileged groups. So again, this is to optimize the information that you need to get about changes that are occurring within Active Directory. So here you can go in and utilize the predefined reports to customize them, and they are so easy to go in and customize these reports and alerts. So at the onset, this allows you to look at the core Active Directory objects that I would call users, groups, and organizational units. You can also look at computers, but typically computers don't change much. They're either created or deleted. That's why I've left computers off the list. Okay, you can also go in and look at group policy changes. That's correct. You can actually look at group policy changes. Earlier today when I was on my webinar with Sweden, there was a question about group policy, and I think group policy usually is a core question area because of the complexity. And one of the things that they were worried about is what needs to be done with group policy. So let me tell you exactly what I told them. With regard to group policy, what I suggest first, and this would be an action item for you if you haven't done this, I want you to, after the webinar, I want you to go into group policy management, go down to your group policy objects node. I want you to right click and back up all your GPOs. This is important because without a tool in place to help you recover, if you make modifications to group policy, how are you going to know what's modified and how are you going to recover from that? Now, this is by no means the best environment to do this, but it is the minimum that I recommend with regard to group policy is make sure that you have a backup of all your GPOs. Now, from there, what do you want to do with group policy? Well, if someone goes in and modifies a GPO, right? So if I pull up the editor, someone goes in, looks at administrative templates, and goes down and just happens to pick a setting. Who knows what this setting is, right? There are thousands of settings inside of a single GPO. If someone randomly picks something or on purpose picks something, and that setting is not a desired setting, how are you going to recover from that? How do you even know what changed? So my recommendation is that you actually get a solution that allows you to look at group policy changes. I want to know when GPOs are created. You'll see here that a GPO was created. I want to know when GPOs are modified. And I need to look at the details of what's going on with the GPO. If I've modified a link, right? So this is a view of GPO management. But GPO management only goes so far. I also need to be able to see the details about the settings that are changing. So in here, I can actually go in and look at the details around, for example, password policy changes. And not only am I telling you the GPO that changed in the parameters, I can actually show you the details of the old value and the new value. Now, those of you that have dealt with group policy for a while understand that once you make a change to policy, there's no undo. You can't send it back. It doesn't remember what the old setting was. So being able to go into some type of a report and see the old values, know what the new value is, and make a determination, you can actually do, you can actually go back and put the old value back, because now you know what the old value was. So this information becomes pretty powerful when you start talking about troubleshooting and recovering from group policy mishaps, let's call them, okay? So we give you a lot of power around this. Now, I will go one step further, and I will also talk about the fact that we have the ability for you to recover from group policy disasters. So let's say someone goes in and wipes out a GPO that had 200 settings. Being able to recover from that can be very difficult. But what we allow you to do is go in and look at changes that are occurring to group policy. So we can actually go in and allow you to restore different types of objects, and those objects include group policy. So I can look at group policy changes that have occurred. I can actually do rollbacks. Rollbacks allow me to go back to a particular point in time. So I can actually go back, let's say, for example, to last year. I could go back to November 30th of last year and roll back any changes that have occurred to group policy. So these are things that you have in place to help you with things that are changing specifically with group policy, which is a very difficult aspect of Active Directory, especially when multiple administrators can change group policy. Things can happen, and without some type of a system to tell you what changed or being able to recover from that, it can take you a while. So I encourage you to take the steps to make sure you're prepared for something like that that could happen. What else can we monitor in Active Directory? Well, specifically password policy changes. Password policy changes are important because many times an attacker will want to reduce the password policy, so when they create accounts, they can have blank passwords. So these things can change, and no one really knows that they're changing. Now, again, I'm going to give you a little bit of a challenge. What I recommend is that when you're done with this webinar, you're going to go into pick a domain controller. It really doesn't matter which machine. Just make sure it's a domain join machine, and I want you to go and run this command, okay? So just go to start and run secpol.msc, secpol.msc. And then I want you to go to your account policies, password policy, and I want you to verify that what you think is in place is actually in place. Because what I find is there is a large percentage, over 10% of organizations that have a password policy that isn't what they think it is. Because they thought they put it in place through certain mechanisms, and it actually didn't work. So please go and verify that your password policy is correct based on what you think it is. The easiest way to do it is go to one machine that's in the domain, run secpol.msc, and make sure that the password policy that you see there is correct, okay? Now, the other thing that you may want to do is, if you already have AD Audit Plus in place and your password policy isn't what you think it is, well, go into the reports of AD Audit Plus and see when the password policy changed. So I have a specific area right here for password policy, and I can determine over the last 6 months every change that's occurred. So for the default domain policy, I can see these settings. Now keep in mind that I can actually have password policy settings that are not in the default domain policy. Let me say that again. I can actually have existing password policy settings that are controlling my domain password policy that do not reside in the default domain policy. This is one of those areas that's very confusing for Active Directory and group policy, and many people still don't understand it. I've written ad nauseum over this particular setting. So if you have any questions about that, email me or just go search our blog. It's all over our blog on how to correctly do this. But the ability for you to know when these things are changing becomes very powerful, okay? Now, we not only give you information on group policy-based password policy changes, but also on fine-grained password policy changes. So we give you insights. We can set up alerts on when fine-grained password policies change too, okay? So those would be right here, the password setting objects that have changed. And I have some changes that have occurred, and we just need to know when these things change. These are very difficult to see, okay? Without the new admin center, it's very difficult to dig in to see your fine-grained password policies. So this gives you insight to that. The admin center does not give you the history, but AD Audit Plus allows you to track the history of when those things change, okay? So as you see, we go from a very generic concept like users into a very complicated and technical area, such as fine-grained password policies. We also allow you to see things that are on the back end, Active Directory services and related services around Active Directory, right, such as DNS. We can track when a FSMO changes, right, flexible single master operations. So inside of AD Audit Plus, we have all these particular areas that you can track. So this now gets you to a much deeper level. These things would almost be impossible to track with Microsoft solutions, such as the event viewer and the security log. But inside of AD Audit Plus, it's just something that we do all the time. And this is another area where the first question that I had is, doesn't the tool set it up? Yes, but we don't set up tracking of DNS by default. We actually have a document that we can send to you that lists for you all of the audit policy and related SACLs that you have to set up in order to track all these different concepts. We know that some organizations don't want to track DNS changes, so we don't set it up and fill up logs. But if you do, we show you how to do that, and then the AD Audit Plus allows you to see the results of that. Not to mention, you can also set up alerts when certain things change, which I think it would be pretty important to have an alert if a FSMO role changed, because if you're relying on certain domain controllers housing certain FSMO roles and then they change, you may want to know that, okay? And then finally, a very difficult aspect, which is Active Directory delegation. Active Directory delegation is an area that is very complicated, and I believe has exposed many Active Directory enterprises to security holes that they weren't even aware of. Now, when I talk about Active Directory delegation, let me show you exactly what I'm referring to. If I go into Active Directory users' computers, and I go to, let's say, an organizational unit and run this delegate control wizard, the delegate control wizard seems pretty basic in terms of what it's doing, because it's asking me for which user or group I'm going to delegate to. So let's say that I'm going to delegate to my HD technicians the ability to reset passwords for any user that's in the HROU, because I've right-clicked on the HROU here to run the delegate control wizard. So I click on which group or user, I then click on which task to delegate, and I'm done. But what actually happened in the background? Well, it's not so easy to see, because the delegate control wizard doesn't report, it only configures. In order to see what I changed, you actually have to go into the Security tab, Advanced, and see that HD techs were set up to reset passwords. Now, if you look at the details, you'll see that here I have one check of reset password, but I have to have another couple of checks, which are to look at the password reset and modify the password last set. Okay? So the concepts seem basic, but the details are highly complex. And my question to you is, how many times over the last 19 years has someone gone into Active Directory, done a right click and set up delegation, and you weren't aware of it? So here's another challenge for you. I suggest that you go to a domain controller and pick 5 random OUs. And then what I want you to do is I want you to go to a command prompt, and I want you to run a particular command against all 5 of those OUs. Okay? The command is DSACLs. It stands for Directory Service Access Control List. Now, in order to actually run the command and target the OU, you have to use LDAP syntax. So if I do OU equals HR, comma, DC equals AD Solutions, comma, DC equals demo, I actually can look at the access control list for that OU. Now, why is this different from what I just showed you inside of the GUI? Well, the GUI actually shows you not only what's configured, but what isn't configured. So, for example, if I come in here, I go to Advanced, I go here, and I go to Edit, well, this list is pretty beefy, right? I have to go through every single checkbox to make sure it's not selected. Plus, I have to go through all these. Highly complicated. So if you just run DSACLs against the OU, you can actually see what's been set, and you can evaluate if everything is correct, right? This is part of that security hardening steps where you have to run a report on what you have before you can actually secure it and monitor it. But once I know that the security is in place and it's correct, all I want to do is set up monitoring and alerting to tell me if things change. And when I made that change, you see right here, I tracked it and I set up an alert. Now, there are 3 types of actually 4 things that you can do with alerts. 1, you can send it to the dashboard. 2, you can send a group of users or individuals an SMS. You can send them an email, or you can actually run some type of a command. So my recommendation is you set up either email or texting. That way, if you're not looking at the dashboard, you still are notified when critical things like this happen. And I can tell you, it's not very often that someone modifies delegation to reset passwords. And when that happens, you want to receive an email immediately so you can take action. If you want to look at the history of things that are changing with regard to permissions, well, I have a dedicated report for that. And I can tell you over the last 30 days, all the different modifications that have occurred to permissions in Active Directory. This information is invaluable for forensics, for reporting, for compliance regulations, all of it. You need to know when this level of detail is changing within Active Directory. Without a solution like this, you have no idea what you have. Again, I challenge you to go verify what you have. Just pick 5 to 10 OUs. In 90+% of all Active Directory environments, when you pick 10% of your OUs, you're going to find a misconfigured delegation over an OU. I've just done too many audits to know that that's not true, okay? So as you can see, you need to dig in of Active Directory. You need to know what you have, and you need to know when things change to understand that you have a secure environment. So this gives you an idea of how to go from the beginning all the way through the process and all these different areas to set up tracking of when Active Directory security changes, when Active Directory changes occur that are important for the stability of your Active Directory environment. So where do you go from here? Well, my recommendation is you hit our website, you download AD Audit Plus, you install it, you configure it. That's a 30-minute process. That's all you need to get this thing running. As soon as you set it up, you start tracking, getting information into AD Audit Plus. I recommend that you set up alerts for anything that could change and hurt the normal process of Active Directory. Also, I do recommend that you go through that security hardening site and you secure all the different areas, not only in Active Directory, but on your domain controllers, servers, and your workstations. If you have any questions about any of this, please email me. Right there is my email address. Please email me. If I don't know the answer, I can reach out to other MVPs. I know a lot of people in the industry, and we can get you answers to the things that you need, okay? So please reach out to me. That concludes our webinar. I saw some questions come through. I want to thank you for the questions. I want to thank my colleagues for helping me and answer those questions as I was going through the material. If you do have any questions, please reach out to any one of us. We love to receive questions. I'm going to let you get back to work. Tomorrow's Friday, so have a happy Friday and a great weekend. I hope to see you again next Tuesday for the final installment of our webinar in this series. And for Derek Melber and the rest of the AD Solutions team, thanks and have a great rest of your day.